Welcome to the Pricing for Photography show. Great to have you here. In this video, we're talking about unlimited usage versus copyright. And as a photographer, when you're trying to decide between the two, how should you go about this? And so that is the topic of today. Of course, we're here to talk about growing your photography business. And if you have questions, put them in the comments. Of course, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can catch me when I go live on Fridays, every Friday, noon Eastern Standard Time. It'd be great to have you here to ask questions about your photography business. I've been in the business 30 years. I have photographed just about everything under the sun, except for maybe war. That's about the only thing I have not photographed. And I've had a great photography career, continue to do so. And I want to share the knowledge with you. And the only way I can share that knowledge, of course, is if you participate in the discussion. So what I have today, the first part is the topic of the day, and that is copyright versus unlimited usage. I'll get right into that. But then after that, I have your questions that I've gathered through my social media, as well as the websites and so forth, and right here on YouTube. So you can put your comment here or catch me on Twitter if you like Twitter, at Rosh Sillars. And of course, you can go to roshsillars.com too. And you can put comments over there related to the various topics that I have on business and marketing for photographers. So should you use unlimited or copyright? So what's the difference? Well, let's go through the process. A lot of times people ask for your copyright and you say, well, is there any value to that? Well, there is. And I'm going to tell you exactly why there's value to your copyright, everyone's copyright. But the first thing is, when you take a photograph and you click that shutter, you are the proud owner of a copyrighted image. Just hands down. It's the law. It's what it is. Now, it's your right. You can decide what you wish to do with it. And again, as I said, every copyright has value. And I'll again show you why in a moment. So there are different ways that we can go about this. Just like any kind of copyrighted material, whether it is writing or software, you have to decide the license. Because you own this copyright, people are now allowed to pay you to license the use of that photograph. And you may pay attention to this or you may not. But a lot of times, in order to keep control of that copyright, people will say, look, I know you want the copyright, but that's going to cost a lot more. And we can talk about how much that may cost. But that's going to cost a lot more. Why don't we offer you unlimited use? You can use, because a lot of times there's a specific issue why somebody wants the copyright. And quite often they want to find out later that they owe more money because they used it in a place they didn't know they were going to use it. So if you know that, look, this is going to be national use and you have a national price, and you can say, look, unlimited usage for this photograph versus purchasing that copyright. This allows you to continue to use that photograph, have control of the licensing of that. It could be possible that maybe after a couple of years, you could say unlimited use for 2 to 3 years. Maybe their campaigns, maybe the company's campaign is 2 or 3 years and they re-up every 2 or 3 years and create something totally new. And so you may have another opportunity to photograph then, but they don't need those photographs anymore. So you may have the opportunity to resell them. Now, if they've purchased the copyright, you don't have the right anymore to resell those photographs. So you are losing opportunities. Now, if you're photographing weddings, if you're photographing portraits and senior portraits, generally that's just personal use. And it's important to let people know. They think, oh, I paid all this money for a wedding. I now own these images. And so when I run for Congress, I can just use these photographs. That is not the case. And so it needs to be very clear to people, this is personal use. So if you're going to use unlimited versus copyright in that discussion, the copyright is so important. Look, here's the basic fact. A lot of times in the beginning, people think their copyright is not valuable because they're just beginning. They don't have as much experience. Experience has nothing to do with the value of your copyright. Here's the basic fact. The reason a copyright is valuable is because, one, first of all, it's in demand. And if people are asking for it, it obviously has value to them. And if there was no value to them, they wouldn't be asking for it. So you should probably charge. But usually it's 50%, 100%, 200% more. Some photographers are even more than that, than their standard rate. So what I will often do is say, let me save you some money. And why don't I give you unlimited use for, again, maybe a year longer than they say they need it. So if they say they're going to need the image for a year, well, then I'll give them 2 years and just make sure they're covered so they feel comfortable about the situation. And then they have unlimited use and you don't have to worry about them coming, they don't have to worry about you coming back to ask for more money. And that's again, one of the main things. And also sometimes they want the copyright because maybe they are afraid someone else is going to publish this image before them. Maybe they're afraid you're going to sell that image before they're going to sell that and they're going to publish that image. So you have to give them those guarantees, such as you can have the first right of publication. You can publish, you have the first rights of publication. So that can give them a little bit of security in the way you approach this. So copyright is not a foregone conclusion, the purchase of. And I always recommend that if you do sell that copyright, that you have a line item saying purchase of copyright. So that, one, there's a record of it. So you know that that person now owns the copyright. And two, that they know they paid extra money for it. That's really important. Don't make copyright a default. I guess that's my best option. Make something else your default. Maybe local usage. Now, a standard for many years was one-time use. You took a picture for somebody. They got one-time use in North America or the country in which you reside. So if you are in the European Union, it could be for the European Union. Anybody could use it anywhere within that region of the world or wherever it may be. You can decide as the photographer, you can always decide what that unlimited use is with maybe some restrictions. But I would often make sure you understand what that use is going to be in general, so you can still price the image properly. Because unlimited use, there are people who I give unlimited use to who are just, I know, based on their experience, and based on what they do, it's not going to get much past the state of Michigan. I just know it. Other than the internet, it's not going to get much past the state of Michigan. That's how they're going to use it. They don't have a lot of traffic to their website. I know they're not doing brochures, whatever it may be, but they want unlimited use. Fine. But the price there is going to be different than somebody who is coming to me who's a national company and wants unlimited use. It's the same usage, but it's not. It's not, because I know that's going to be national usage. The value is much higher for that photograph, although they still get unlimited use. They can use that image unlimited in their national way, where that other person's going to use it in an unlimited way locally. I often like to have backstops such as time. That's always valuable. And that way I know I can resell the image if it's something that has a market. Not every image has a market, obviously. So, and of course, in some situations, there's proprietary stuff going on and you can't resell it. And there are situations where it's just locked away in my archive because, look, this is machinery. This is an invention that, no, they don't want that to ever be resold. And maybe that's a situation where you do sell the copyright to give them that, just that security. And that's usually when I will sell it. Or the only other time really to sell a copyright is if the client is going to actually resell that image. If they have no need to resell that image, or there isn't proprietary or security reasons for it, why should they have to pay more money? Or why should they? Give them this other option, which we call unlimited usage. But again, sometimes I do have clients who are actually reselling that image and making money off that image by reselling it, and they need the copyright. I get it, and I get my cut, right? And so should you. You should get your part of it by giving, again, double the price or whatever it may be. Okay, so that is where I stand. Unlimited usage is become more and more common in a sense to fight everybody wanting copyright as a default. So that's what often happens but you can still narrow it down and say, okay, you can use this image specifically for web use over 2 years. You can say something like that. Or you can use this image only for flyers during the next year. I mean, unlimited number of flyers. So there are a lot of ways you can structure it. So I often like to really ask a lot of good questions. And that asking questions is how you're going to find out your best solution for your client. Because remember, it's not all about you. Certainly you need to protect yourself, but ultimately you need to make that client happy without giving away your rights and your opportunity to earn future income. Okay. Hey, if you are interested, again, if you have questions, you can put them in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you catch the next video live. And you can always ask questions at Rosh Sillars. If you're interested in more marketing kinds of questions, rosh.video is where you'll want to go. And I have a lot of, just put that in the URL and it'll magically take you to my other YouTube channel. Okay, so let me answer your questions that I have here. I have about 5 questions from the community, and I always look forward to these questions. Now, these are more business related or all over the board, really, which is just fine. This is the channel for business questions to grow your photography. So you can ask any kind of question related to the business of photography here. Yes, pricing is our angle and is our core. However, we're wide open today with this channel as we continue to grow. And mostly I am doing these live videos, but I'm sprinkling in some pre-production videos or just produced videos, the non-live videos here and there as I can. But right now I'm making a big push on the other channel, on the marketing channel. Okay. What if my niche is too small? Is the question. In other words, somebody's trying to narrow down, become an expert, really just kind of dominate a specific area of photography. And what if the niche is too small? Here's the thing. Become that expert in that really small niche. That is just fine. That doesn't mean that's the only thing you do. You can, but you want to become that expert. And if you feel it's too small, you can always broaden it out a little bit, because mostly you use your niche for your marketing. That's mostly where you focus. Your marketing is based around that niche. And you can have a few. I have a few myself: people, interiors, food. Those are 3 niches that I work very hard on and do well with. But that doesn't mean I don't do manufacturing. That doesn't mean I don't do architectural work once in a while too, or landscape for clients. I mean, I do all sorts of work, but I advertise my niche in those 3 areas, develop my specialty, and 3 is probably too many. But I've been around and I've developed them, and it's taken time. I've been doing this a long time. But if you have a year or two that you really need to get things off the ground, focus on one thing and make sure that people know of you for that one area. Okay, so yes, a niche could be too small, but I'm not so concerned about it for the most part in the very, very beginning. Okay, do I need a studio in 2018? I would say no, you don't necessarily need a studio. I am recording right now from my studio in Pleasant Ridge, Michigan, just a mile and a half outside of Detroit. 8 mile is the dividing line, so we're a mile and a half from that famous 8 Mile. And all that stuff was just filmed down the road. Let's see. So but you really don't. So much of my work, I mean, honestly, we go weeks without this studio being used. We really do. I mean, fortunately, we have enough business in general that covers our studio, which is great. However, majority of the work these days is on location. People don't need studios quite as much. And I mean, a lot of times the studio truly was designed because you need to be in full control of everything. And there's still photography, especially the food photography, although I do a lot on location too. But you know, you can get away with less now on location in many cases. But in most cases, a lot of times you need to go on location, and a studio is not necessary. But if you find you're getting clients who require a studio, or you keep finding yourself renting a studio, or you're finding that your clientele is growing and that, you know, you're tired of doing it in your basement, you know, and you're inviting people to you made a little studio in your basement. Most of your work, 80%, 90% is on location, but you do invite people. You warn them ahead that, hey, this is at my home, or wherever you made your studio. Hey, maybe it's time to, if it looks like that clientele is growing, maybe it's worth looking into a studio. And remember, location is important, but unless you're doing retail, it doesn't necessarily have to be on a main street. And there are a lot of opportunities around for reasonable rent that is not on the that's not on the main street. Okay, how much can I charge as an assistant to get more experience? So someone wants to get more experience as a photographer, and how much do you charge as an assistant? I'm finding the average rates are anywhere from $200 to $300 a day. And a day is 10 hours, usually 8 hours of shooting, 10 hours of pre-production, and then tear down at the end. So expect at least a 10-hour day. And then if it goes beyond 10 hours, then you can add your hourly rate. So if it's $20, $25 per hour, that's very reasonable. 30. I mean, obviously, if you're the first assistant, you can charge more than, say, the second assistant, and so forth. So there are Digitechs and so forth that charge even more than that. If you have a specialty skill that maybe photographers really need, maybe there's a type of lighting that you understand, or some area of photography that you seem to understand really well, and photographers hire you because they need support and understanding of that topic or subject matter, you can charge a little more, add a premium to that. But for experience in general, yeah, you're going to run around $200 to $300. Depends on what area of the country. New York's going to be different than Iowa. Just that simple. So ask around, of course, but you can start in that range. And if all the photographers seem to balk, then you can start trying to figure out what the market is in your area. Okay, how much does it cost to start a photography business? Interesting question. It's probably more than you think. It's generally more than just a camera. You mean there are insurances, there is marketing, there's travel, the cost of travel to go see prospects. You need a laptop and software and internet to connect with people and deliver photographs. So there are a lot of little expenses. So you really should write it all down. I mean, the type of camera, obviously your big expenses. You don't have to go Mac, although a lot of photographers use Mac, but you could save money not going Mac. You can start with a Canon Rebel or the Nikon equivalent. I'm not sure off the top of my head what that would be. Obviously, I use more Canon. But you can start off with some basic lenses, basic lighting. Alien B is a great place to get some lighting for a decent price. That's good. I've used their equipment in the past and have been very happy with it. And I've used, believe it or not, I have used Canons for international campaigns. So, I mean, let me clarify: Canon Rebels for international campaigns. I generally use a D6 Mark II. Is it Mark II? Yeah, Mark II these days. That's my main camera, but I have all sorts of cameras, including a few Rebels that are sometimes just easier to have as a backup or pull out or whatever it may be for different situations. So don't worry about how big of a camera. Just make sure you get the camera that fits your needs. Think about the things you really need right now for the type of photography you're going to do, and just focus on purchasing those things. The things you don't need right now, you can always purchase later. So, I mean, to really start, you're probably going to, depending on the type of photography, it's going to be $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. It could even be $10,000 to start, again, depending on the type of photography you're doing. And also remember, and I have a video on this, you can also rent. You can also rent equipment. That's always an option too, which will help keep expenses low in the very beginning of your career. Okay, last question. Should I start a podcast for my photography? Interesting question. I did. I did in 2008, new media photographer, but I focused on the business side as I do today in social media and so forth. I think you'd be better off with either a blog or a YouTube channel if you're a photographer and you want to show off what you're doing, because it's visual. You want to show your stuff. I mean, you could do stuff on Instagram. You could do some live stories on Instagram. That's not a bad way to go. A podcast is not the first thing I would do, although people do like listening to photography tips on podcasts and so forth. But if you're doing social to get new clients, well, then I think that you probably want to do something that's highly visual and that people are actually looking for photographers on. And I generally don't think people are looking for photographers on a podcast. Other photographers may be looking for you as an expert on a podcast. And that, again, if photographers are your target market, well, then that could be great. And that's often what I will do. Okay, here we go. So thank you all so much for participating each week. Catch me live on Fridays, noon Eastern Standard Time. And I'm looking forward to talking with you next week. Have a great week, and I'm looking forward to seeing your questions for next week. You guys are coming up with some great ones. Talk to you later.